In the years 1955 to 1968, the United States was in the midst of change. The Civil Rights Movement led the war against racism in America. The individuals that participated in this movement did not walk an easy path. They faced violence and they faced hatred, but they survived and they prospered. In the years 1961 to 1963, 400 individuals took on the mission to combat segregation on interstate travel. These 400 challenged the United States to uphold the constitutional mandate of liberty and justice for all. These 400 rose up from across the nation. These 400 are the Freedom Riders. On December 1, 1955, Rosa Louise Macaulay Parks refused to give up her seat in the colored section of a Montgomery bus, and she was arrested. This act of silent rebellion was the beginning of the iconic Montgomery bus boycotts, and it is this very same event that inspired a movement that would revolutionize interstate travel throughout the United States. 6 years later, 13 men and women, both black and white, would board Greyhound and Trailway buses in Washington, D.C. These 13 individuals would be arrested, beaten, and stare death in its eyes, but they would continue on. These 13 would inspire a nation. These 13 would make the civil rights movement national news. These 13 were the Freedom Riders. Under the leadership of James Farmer, the Congress for Racial Equality organized the Freedom Rides to challenge the bus desegregation ruling the Interstate Commerce Commission had issued in November of 1955. They wanted to prove to the American people that these new laws were merely writing on a piece of paper in the eyes of the South. But in order to do so, they would have to travel through the most racist cities in America on buses mixed with both black and white passengers sitting together in harmony, ending in Louisiana. Martin Luther King Jr., the Baptist preacher and prominent civil rights activist, told the Freedom Riders that this movement would be an insult to the civil rights movement as a whole and would ultimately be unsuccessful. The original 13 decided to continue on without his support, and on May 4th of 1961, they began their journey. A mere 10 days later, they would be forced to retreat back to the north. On May 14th of 1961, both buses were attacked upon entering Alabama. The Greyhound bus was firebombed on the highway just outside of Anniston. All 6 riders were hospitalized, and the bus was burned to its skeleton. Despite the danger they knew was waiting for them, the 7 riders remaining on the Trailways bus decided to continue on, still hoping to reach Louisiana. But the riders were met by a mob of Ku Klux Klan members and other white supremacist groups at the bus station that had been gifted with 15 minutes by Bill Connor, the chief of the Birmingham Police Department, to do what they pleased with the bus mixers without the fear of arrest. Although all 13 Freedom Riders made it out alive, the Alabama state government used their authority to force them back to the north. The attacks at Anniston and Birmingham made the Freedom Rides headline news. The violence these 13 individuals had faced showed the true hypocrisy of the American society. How could the American government interfere in affairs abroad, while in our own nation, our own people, suffered at the hands of hatred and inequality? With the Freedom Rides plastered across television screens and newspapers, it became evident that the civil rights movement as a whole was here to stay. On day 13 of the Freedom Rides, 2 days after the Alabama attacks, young people from around the country joined together in Nashville, Tennessee, and the movement continued on. The youth of America recognized that they could not allow the Freedom Rides to stop. If the Freedom Rides were not continued, the civil rights movement would send a message to America that once the going got tough, they would stand down and let life go on without change. Under the leadership of Diane Nash, a student at Fisk University, the Freedom Rides expanded. Every day, there were buses filled with students spanning from California to Alabama, traveling to the most racist cities in America, all in the name of equality on interstate travel. These young college students put their lives and their careers on hold for the future of America. They could not be silenced, and they could not be stopped. The Freedom Riders filled the jails and suffered beatings, but they remained peaceful. Eventually, their message reached the Kennedy administration. The Freedom Rides had gained political legitimacy, and actions would be taken towards their protection by both state and federal governments. The Freedom Riders were here to stay.
Around 11 o'clock, I talked to Mr. Siegenthaler, and the governor at that time assured Mr. Siegenthaler that we have the means, the ability, and the will to protect these people. We will make sure that people traveling in interstate commerce and traveling across our highways are not molested, and traveling through our cities are not harmed. That's all I asked for. He said that he gave us his flat word and assurance that that would happen.
The Alabama state government may have had the means, the ability, and the will to protect the Freedom Riders, but they failed to do so. On day 17 of the Freedom Rides, the Nashville students were attacked in Montgomery, Alabama. In this attack, it was not only the riders that were brutally beaten, but also the news crews and cameramen that were covering the story. Despite their injuries, the Freedom Riders would not back down.
Get to this. We'll take hitting, we'll take beating. We're willing to accept death. But we're going to keep coming until we can ride from anywhere in the South to any place else in the South.
Upon witnessing the courageous actions of the Freedom Riders, Martin Luther King Jr. decided it was time to pledge his support. Martin Luther King, the very same man that had rejected the Freedom Riders, was now embracing them and encouraging others to do the same. The Freedom Riders had united the Civil Rights Movement. The Freedom Riders had brought Americans together to fight for the common good. The Freedom Riders continued their journey despite the hatred, despite the violence, despite the aggression. They showed America what a peaceful protest could accomplish. They fought for equality in Alabama and every other segregated state. The original 13 Freedom Riders did not leave Washington, D.C. in vain. They called the United States government to action. They inspired their generation through their courageous actions and peaceful efforts. They continue to inspire us today. The Freedom Riders successfully desegregated interstate travel. On June 11th of 1963, as the Berlin Wall was being built, the wall of inequality that divided interstate travel was being knocked down. On this day, President John F. Kennedy gave a speech to Congress. In this speech, he called America to action. In this speech, he gave the Freedom Riders what they had been fighting for 2 years. In this speech, President John F. Kennedy desegregated interstate travel, and this new ruling was enforced.
A great change is at hand, and our task, our obligation, is to make that revolution, that change, peaceful and constructive for all. Those who do nothing are inviting shame as well as violence. Those who act boldly are recognizing right as well as reality.
The heroic actions of the Freedom Riders mark a turning point in history. The Freedom Rides forced the Interstate Commerce Commission and the federal government to enforce the bus desegregation ruling issued in November of 1955 and awakened a new wave of respect for equality, ultimately influencing not only Americans, but the international community as well. Although the United States Freedom Rides ended with John F. Kennedy's speech in 1963, their message and the movement continues to spread across the globe. From Sydney to Cairo to Al-Baha to Jerusalem, new Freedom Riders board buses, trains, and subways every day in the name of equality. A movement whose purpose was to better America continues to turn the wheel of change today. The Freedom Riders did more than just make equality a reality. They did more than just unite the civil rights movement. They did more than just free a people from the chains of segregation and oppression. The Freedom Riders of 1961 proved a simple truth. Change is out there and change is necessary. One just has to be willing to fight for it until the end.